You tell me if you can see me or not.
I'm not in there, so I won't be able to tell you.
Okay, looks like I have. Maybe you can go in and just see, let's see, entire screen, application window. So do I share the entire screen, application window?
So now, for sharing your PowerPoint, you want to
Application window, I think.
application window, yeah.
So
That's your PowerPoint.
is that, what can you see?
I can't see anything. I'm looking at the instructions.
Oh. Is sharing my window. Okay, so, hey Derek, I can see and hear you. You'll want to use application window. I can see your slides. Okay, Rachel, if you can hear me, can you see me and my slides? Yes. Now, for me to advance my slides, do I need to keep my viewer mode open? I'm assuming yes. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so it sounds like you guys can hear me. I'll just do a test and so Rachel, it sounds like you can hear and see me. Can you see me on the screen and can you see my slides? So is that okay? Yes to both. Okay. All right, Lindsay, it sounds like you can go in and just send me a note in the chat just to let me know that you can hear me okay.
Have fun.
Okay, thanks. See ya. Bye. Okay, well, I guess we'll get started here. I wanted to start first by thanking everyone for joining us this afternoon. And my name's Derek Smith. My name's Derek Smith, and I'm going to share my thoughts with you guys on really how HR has changed over the years and the impact of technology on that change. Now, before I get going, what I'd like to do is just ask anyone if you can just simply respond in the chat whether or not you can hear me or not. And I'll wait until someone types in, yes, I can hear you. Okay, perfect. Okay, great, thanks. So it sounds like you can hear me. Seeing me isn't important and probably isn't even a good thing, but I think both are working. So thanks for joining us. My name is Derek Smith. I'm going to share my thoughts on really how things have changed in HR and the impact of technology on that change. My background is from technology. I've been in the technology sector for about 25 years. I was at Apple, HP, and the Royal Bank. So I was in a bunch of different companies in the technology side. I've made the transition over to HR tech. You know, HR is not the only thing that's changing in the world these days. There's a lot of things going on, but if you take a look at some companies that have had change happen to them and maybe didn't react the best. If you take a look at Blockbuster, Blockbuster had over 9,000 video rental stores. They really didn't see the change in the industry coming their way. There were people like Netflix who created, who would have thought a DVD by mail service would turn into what Netflix is today, and Blockbuster is no more. You take a look at BlackBerry, really strong company. Then Apple came along and just changed the way people wanted to use a phone, and they never really changed. And it's all about how HR has changed and is going to continue to change. Kodak. I think we all remember Kodak, and some of us are old enough to remember when there was the Kodak moment, or when you went away with your parents and they took pictures of you with the 35 mil camera, and they never really saw the digital camera coming. So HP took that market from Kodak with the digital cameras, and then HP lost that to the smartphones, whether it's Apple or whether it's Samsung or any of the other Android phones. To give you an idea, 1.8 billion pictures are taken a day in the world. So a lot of pictures being taken, and Kodak is nowhere to be found. When you look at the things have also changed during the pandemic. Companies have had to adjust as well, just like HR. Breweries have gone from selling beer to making hand sanitizer. There's also liquor companies that have gone from selling liquor to selling hand sanitizer. I had hand sanitizer the other day. It smelled like tequila, so it's kind of interesting. Food delivery companies, they saw a huge demand in hiring, with everybody wanting to get their food delivered, and they had to change the way they were doing things as well. Clothing companies, they've also started making non-medical masks. Some of them are being, they're actually quite nice. You can see a picture of the young lady on the right-hand side has a really nice mask on. And, it's now becoming a fashion statement. I think people are going to start getting ones that'll just match whatever they're wearing. A lot like when you take a look at how phone cases are being used nowadays. People use their phone case almost as a fashion statement. And that kind of brings me to a bit of a story when I was at Apple. I was the managing director for Apple Canada a few years ago. And there's the band story. So some people may or may not know the story, but when the iPhone 3 was introduced, it was a great phone, got a bit of a curved back. The issue that we had, though, is when you were on the phone for more than 5-10 minutes, all of a sudden the phone call would cut off and nobody could figure out what the issue was. So after a bit of time, the tech folks found out that the heat of your hand holding your phone, so holding it like this, was actually cutting off the phone because the antenna is wrapped around the outside of the phone. So like Apple came up with an idea. Well, why don't we have a little black band that wraps around it and then you'll still be able to use your phone? Well, nobody wanted to do that, but people said, well, reluctantly, I bought a phone because I actually want to make phone calls. So people started putting it on. Steve Jobs then came up with the idea of coming up with a red one. All of a sudden, we were getting phone calls and emails, people wanting the band for their phone, even if their phone wasn't one of the ones that was affected. And, I think the rest is history because, if you think about it, it's all about phone cases now, and people customize their phones. Some people even change their cases every week. So Apple had to go through some changes as well and pivot during some weird times. Companies that were using remote technology during the hiring process, were able to pivot faster than others. Organizations were forced into remote interviewing and onboarding, and a lot of companies really weren't ready for it. There was the increased use of Slack, for integrating new employees, because how do you integrate employees when they're working from home? Is Slack and Zoom and other tools like that just became really, really good tools to be able to make that happen. Outdated background screening processes such as in-person ID verification by the hiring managers, or in some cases having to send your candidates to a Canada Post locations, turned into being a concern for a lot of organizations that were looking at hiring. So let's take a look at what HR was and what HR is today. So you take a look at what HR was. It used to be known as personnel. It was found on the second floor in the back corner of a building, mostly focused on forms, procedures, administration, and payroll. And that was then. So it was really a very operational type role. You fast forward to now, and HR is a whole lot more complex. It's become a business unit that's got a lot of different pieces of the organization touching it. Culture, talent management, workforce planning, recruitment marketing, technology. The technology continues to change. It's a tougher job than it's ever been. And you add all of that together, and the job isn't getting any easier because there's also the war for talent. So, now the HR team needs to be an expert in online activities, online marketing. So they need to be experts in those areas, protecting the brand name, being on Glassdoor, understanding what's being said out there, being, an expert in social media, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Marketing folks have a tough job right now. And the other thing is you also must be a strategic business partner. HR has a seat at the table, involved in determining the talent coming into the organization, and it's become a big picture role, working closely with senior management to develop the company goals. And that wasn't the case, 10, 15 years ago. In fact, more CEOs, I believe, are going to be coming from those positions. You look at GM, Xerox, they've had CEOs that were in the VP or the CHRO roles for HR. And I think you're going to see more of that as HR roles are going to become more business roles and touching more of the organization. So let's take a look at the technology stack. The HR technology is an enormous part of today's business, period. Globally, these companies that are selling tech into HR, it's about a $400 billion business worldwide. And just in the US alone, it's $250 billion. So there's a lot of choices out there for you to make. And what I would suggest is you got to make those choices wisely, because for every solution you can look at, there's probably 10 others that will do something slightly different. So you need to make sure you evaluate it properly. Technology is evolving the way HR works. Many technology tools are used to automate administrative tasks, allowing HR to focus more on the strategic stuff. I think when HR first started looking at technology, people thought that HR would be replaced. Not a chance. It's going to allow HR folks to spend their time more wisely. The introduction of artificial intelligence, and this isn't one of these technologies that's coming. It's already here. It's being used a lot for onboarding, employee engagement. And I think it's good on all of us to leverage those type of tools in order to allow you to be a lot more strategic. And we're seeing, technology, when you look at these gray rectangles that are on this chart, we're seeing technology at every stop along the way in the talent acquisition journey. So another thing is when you take a look at technology, more than 95% of Fortune 500 companies use an ATS. It streamlines the recruiting process and keeps up with the thousands of applications that you guys would see. What has changed, though, is because of the popularity of the ATS solutions and the robustness of these platforms, using Workday as an example, it's allowing all the other vendors that were in that technology stack that we just looked at to integrate into those platforms to make it easier for you guys to be able to do your work, and again, to free up more of your time. When you take a look at employee engagement and retention, There's a couple of tools that are really important. Learning management systems. I just put up one of those as an example. Desire to Learn, or D2L, as a lot of people call it. A local company. It helps with career growth, providing access to continuous training. So that's important. Another product, and there's lots of them out there, Glint, helps human resource managers understand how workers feel about, their employers. And it's an easy, continuous survey. Give you an idea about Glint. Glint was purchased by LinkedIn for $400 million a couple of years ago. And speaking of LinkedIn was purchased by Microsoft a few years ago for $26 billion. So these platforms have a lot of technology built into it. And really, it's there in order to make your job easier. So you take a look at the candidate experience. It impacts your brand. You want to make sure that the candidate experience is good, but also make sure you're getting the right people through this whole process by having a robust background screening process. Outdated technologies can frustrate candidates and cause them to drop off. Believe it or not, when candidates are going on your website, if your website looks old, they start drawing some conclusions on what it's like to work for your organization. That was really one of the reasons why Apple became so popular in a corporate environment. People started realizing that it was neat and cool to give out a MacBook to their employees, and people felt like, hey, this must be a company that cares about their employees and has really good technology. It may not necessarily be the case, but there's those things that candidates are going to draw their conclusion from. Let's take a look at some of the areas of outdated technology could frustrate candidates and cause them to drop off of your process and go elsewhere. Is in the food delivery business. If the process is difficult and it requires them to go outside of the app, they're frustrated and they're going to drop off and they're going to go somewhere else and look for another gig type of employment. So it's a really important decision that you need to make. So talent acquisitions changed years ago to include online presence, but only in the last few years has technology really ramped up for background screening. Important to ensure that all of your vendors, including background screening vendors, are evolving with the technology. Prior to 2000, 25% of companies did some form of background screening, whether that was a quick call to someone that they knew who knew the employee, or other, kind of superficial background checks. Fast forward to the year 2020, and over 90% of companies are doing some form of background screening, whether that's references or voice references or e-references, criminal record checks, and other types of checks or verifications to ensure that what the person is telling you is true. Background screening has evolved. Now it's rare not to do a criminal record check at a minimum. Background checks have become more automated and they're all online, and they really do solve problems for recruiters, but it really does give companies a feel that they can feel more comfortable about that employee day one when they're walking in. So technology's changed the way background screening vendors work as well. So if you think about a couple of these things, so you take a look at the graphic on the left, which is a screen. You want to make sure that the background screening provider that you're using has optimized their application. So not only is it good on a desktop computer, but also a notebook, but even mobile, because it helps candidates get through that process quicker, and it allows you to make a decision quicker, and it allows you to keep that candidate interested in your organization versus others. Integrations. So you see Greenhouse, that's just one example. We showed other ones. There's Workday, Bullhorn, a variety of different integrations and ATS providers out there. It's a must. It makes it easier for not only you, but for the candidates going through the process. Online, automated consent. So you can see we've got a bit of a signature with Casey Jones on there. You do want to make sure that the provider you're using has an online process that allows you to get consent from the candidate, because all background screens in Canada need the candidate's consent. And you want to make that easy to use so that they could do it from the comfort of their own home. Being open 7 days a week, obviously the way the world has changed now, we are not a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 workplace anymore. So you want to make sure that your provider is open 7 days a week. And then you also want to make sure that the data storage is in Canada. That's just going to help you with any of your provincial or federal laws that you need to adhere to in your business. So technology changed the way actual background checks are completed as well. So to give you an example, turnaround time for criminal record checks used to be 48 hours. Then it was 24. Then it was 4. Now it's even much less than that. And, at some point, it'll be even quicker than an hour, which allows you to make a decision quicker. And that's what you want to be able to do, to act on an employee, offer them a role, but you want to make sure you're offering the right person the role. E-references, they've emerged as a fast and informative way to collect information. Gone are the days, for the most part, where you want to actually have a voice reference and be calling a candidate's references. E-references allows you to get feedback not only from the candidate, because they'll tell you a lot of good things in an interview, but you can also get feedback from the person who used to be their boss, someone who worked with them as a peer, or even people who reported to them, because that's when you really get a good 360 view on what somebody is like. When was the last time you ever purchased something on Amazon and you didn't go in to read the reviews to see what other people said about that product? It holds a lot of weight. So e-references, I think, are an important piece. And then also innovative ID verification tools. You want to be able to use tools that allow you to identify who the candidate is, but without having the candidate having to go somewhere to be identified, whether it's come into your office, and now with COVID-19, in a lot of cases, you don't want that to happen. There are other older technologies where background screening companies would send these candidates to Canada Post. So Canada Post would ID who the person is. A lot of Canada Post locations during COVID-19 were closed. There are innovative ID processes where you can have that done online, so your candidate never has to leave the comfort of their own home. They can get the checks done from their own home. They can get ID verified from their own home, and you and them can jointly make a decision on whether you want them to start with you relatively quickly without having to wait and quite frankly, put their health at risk having to leave their home. So the future of HR technology. So there's going to be more AI and automation in all aspects, whether it's employee engagement, learning and development, which we already talked about. There's going to be a lot of AI at the front end of the process when you're trying to attract talent. More ID verification tools, which we talked about, to make it faster and easier. Focus on data privacy and technologies. The key thing there is, new technologies that increase your security levels, because that's not going to get any easier for your organizations to implement. And then more data analytics, more real-time analytics. Even things like blockchain will be coming into the HR process for hiring in the not too distant future. So what's next? So take a look back at what, I would say, take a look back at what your organization has done up to this point. Evaluate your current vendors. Do they have more to offer when you look at your ATS provider? Are there more ways to integrate with any of your other partners that you're using, any of your other suppliers? Background screening, are you getting the most out of your supplier? How have they performed during COVID? Good, bad? Is it time to look at something just to see? Ask questions such as, what is our candidate experience like? Because at the end of the day, it's your brand that people, whether you hire them or not, are going to walk away with the feeling of what your brand is all about. What is your candidate drop-off rate? Can you change that? Are there different pieces of that process that you can look at to change how you are, how you're attracting candidates, but also how you're moving them through the process? And, do we know why candidates are abandoning the hiring process? Do we have too many steps in it? Is it our ATS? Is it some other things? So lots of things that you can look at with your current technologies. So, what's next? So, looking ahead, how the workforce is changing, you want to ask questions such as, are we ready for a fully remote workforce? Questions I think all of us are asking. Will we see phase 2? Will there be a phase 3? Are we ready for a fully remote workforce? And it's things that, listening to some of the other sessions that we're on today, there are different techniques that we can all use to figure out how we can be more remote, or even in some cases, fully remote. what's changing in our business, and what do we need to do to adapt or change? Things that jump to mind that are harder to get out of would be office space. Do we have too much office space? Too little? Do we need more people? Do we need less people? Do we need to look at our talent management process? Are some of the people that were working from home just not doing a good job in working from home? Is the trust factor higher or lower? And I think there's all things that we need to ask ourselves. You need to evaluate the technology of your current vendors with the future in mind. Can your background screening provider integrate with your ATS? It just makes it easier for you. So I would suggest strongly you want to look at that. Is the ATS scalable? And do your vendors have a robust, innovative technology roadmap that's going to keep up with the changing of not only your company, but with the market? So with all that being said, what I want to do, just spend about 1 minute or a minute and a half talking about Screening Canada, to tell you a little bit more about what our company does. I guess there's three things we'll talk about. So Screening Canada, there's three key things that we like to talk about. The first one is we're a Canadian company. Our head office is in British Columbia. Our focus is on Canada, period. So we know everything there is to know about background screening in Canada. We can also do your checks for other countries, but our focus is Canada. All of our staff are located in Canada. We have an ex-police chief on staff, which certainly helps out. One of our executives is a member of the Professional Background Screening Association, so they're a member of the board. So that keeps us in tune with what's going on. Our founders were founders of the background screening company industry in Canada. So again, we are a Canadian organization. From a technology standpoint, what you'll see is our technology was developed in 2018, not like some technologies that are 10, 15 years old. We have integration first, and that's the key thing. We want to make it easy for different ATS platforms to integrate and other solutions to integrate into our platform. Live video ID. So, if you take a look at what's going on in the world today, a lot of candidates don't want to have to go somewhere else to be identified on who they are. We have a couple of different checkpoints in being able to identify candidates online, including what we call live video ID. And we would love to have a follow-up conversation with you to talk more about that. And then customer service. We've got a fully bilingual staff that works 7 days a week, and we have dedicated account managers for folks who are looking to come on and do their background screening with Screening Canada. So that's who we are. My name is Derek Smith. I was pleased to present to you guys over the last 20, 25 minutes. We'd love to set up time to have a conversation with you guys to find out if there's anything that we can do to help you out. It's always good to take a look at another provider to see if it's something that we can do differently. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time. Stay safe. And remember, when you think about the things we talked about, these companies that we're changing, change can be a good thing. So with that, I will log off and thank you guys for your time.